We're going to use Google Trends to compare interest in baking over time in 3 different countries. So to get started, we click on Explore, and then we type baking in one of the boxes, in the first box. And by default, it's showing the United States. Let's click again on another box and type baking again. And once you do that, notice that then you will be able to change filters. So we are going to change filters for the United States and select the long-term trend, 2004 to the present. We'll do the same for another country. Let's change to, for example, Australia. And let's again change the trend, 2004 to the present. So now we have 2 countries, and we can add another country, the interest of baking in another country. Baking, make sure to hit return when you enter the term. Again, change filters, and 2004 to the present, and we're going to compare, for example, with Germany. You don't have to compare these 3 countries, and you don't have to compare interest in baking in particular. You could select interest in something else. But looking at this trend on interest over time in baking, we can see that the United States has much more interest than the other 2 countries, and that's consistent throughout the whole trend, and followed by Australia, and then the least interest seems to be happening in Germany. Now, let's suppose we want to look at a more detailed trend of a short term. So we want a window of this bigger trend. And what we can do is change filters and select, for example, the past 12 months. We are also asked to do that in exercise 1.1 of time series for data scientists. And we do that for all the countries by, again, changing filters. Notice that while we're doing that, the image disappears. So we are looking at the last year. And according to this short-term trend, which is just 1 year, this interest in baking is still higher, of course, because we already noticed that it's higher for the United States than for the other countries. We also noticed that it's pretty flat throughout the last year. And what else do we notice? Germany continues to be below. Of course, we noticed that in the long-term trend. Sometimes when you do a window, you can observe maybe something particularly interesting or different from what you observe in the long-term trend. Depends how many years you have. But in particular here, we just sort of confirm what we notice in the long-term trend, but also happening in the short-term trends. Now, let's go back to the long-term trend again and answer some questions. We need to do that for the 3 countries. So interest in baking, again, since 2004, this is what we're going to be looking at. And here is the graph. So now we can answer some of the questions asked in section 1.1 of time series for data scientists. We already answered which country has been the most interested in baking. The United States over time. Second question, what is common to the interest in baking in all 3 countries over time? Well, there's something common, which is that the interest increased considerably. If you scroll down through the picture, you can see that in most interest happened in April 2020. That's true in all the three countries. That's about when the pandemic was, the COVID-19 pandemic started to be noticeable, and people, if you recall, went to the stores and bought flour for a long time, to have flour for a long time. And clearly this trend shows that interest in baking increased a lot, probably to use all that flour, right? So the interest in baking was very high after March 2020, which is when the COVID pandemic became very significant. What else is common? Well, nothing much is common other than the fact that interest is increasing in the United States and Australia over time, but maybe a little bit also in Germany. There's from being almost on the x-axis to being a little bit above the x-axis. We can see sort of a slight increase in the trend. And now the third question is, what do we predict it will happen to the interest in baking in those countries after the last date that we have here, which is December 2023. Well, it looks like in the United States, interest in baking will continue to increase. In Germany, interest in baking will continue to increase. And in Germany, interest in baking will also continue to increase, but the rate of increase seems to be higher in the United States and in Australia. Is there any other question? Can we identify the largest peaks as a special events? Well, we identified the largest peak in here in the three countries as remember April, that was the COVID. But what about the other ones? Why is the United States showing interest at such periodic times? December 2004, is November 2005, November 2006, November 2007. So it seems like in November in the United States, there is an increase in interest in baking. December, November, December. So what happens in December and November in the United States? Well, it's Thanksgiving Day. It's a big baking day in the United States. And there is Christmas. Christmas baking is interesting. Christmas is interesting. Baking in Christmas increases because Christmas baking is pretty popular also in the United States. There's not such regularity in Germany. We see some peaks. Let's see when those happen in Germany, but there it seems more like a random fluctuation in the interest in baking in Germany. And in, I'm sorry, this will be Australia. The second one will be Australia. Let's see, Australia, 70, okay. And interest in Germany is this little pig again. On the only pig we can identify is the pandemic. Okay, so you could try other terms for your answer to exercise 1.1. The reason I'm doing this is because sometimes without instructions it's kind of hard to compare trends of the same term interest across countries. And for your information, there is this website, https://support.google.com trends, and in that page you can see how to compare locations, how to compare terms across languages, how to compare terms across locations, except that for some reason the instruction here is not containing the same term, and compare time periods, and so on. So you can remember that in order to be able to use the filters, you will have to type something in 2 boxes at least. Okay, that's something that it's good remembering. So we have talked about using Google Trends for exercise 1.1. Now, what can we do with this data? Of course, the data, once you have it, data on interest, you can just download a CSV file. And this CSV file is nice because you can have a timestamp and you can have the countries, interest in baking in each of these countries, and you could do time series analysis with them or add them to your models or use them as covariates or many other uses that we are going to have for these kinds of time series across the chapters in the book. So it's worth keeping in mind that these could be good data sets to have. And it's easy to download them and read them into R as a CSV file. And the plots also are worth keeping, and you can share them or you can just embed them in some image and so on. So remember, this is for exercise 1.1 in chapter 1.